Hello, everyone. Welcome to this historic occasion. We just launched GAKS Global Alliance for KRW Stablecoin today. I'm Shane Kim, EVP of Wemade and CEO of WEMIX. I'm very honored to moderate today's discussion. Let me introduce our special panels and partners today. Mr. Ronghui, the CEO of CertiK, and Mr. James Ang, Asia VP of Chainalysis, and Sean Ang from Asia head of the RWA and Stablecoins from Chainlink, and Dan Yu, CS of SENTBE. Very nice to meet you.
Our pleasure.
Together we are building the infrastructures for KRW stablecoins together. Actually, the GAKS is a partnership for the StableNet. StableNet is a full lifecycle infrastructures for KRW stablecoin, including the dedicated mainnet. So let's into the conversation. First, let's start with the big picture question. Everybody knows that the global stablecoin markets are advanced rapidly last few years. And my first question is that please sharing your thoughts or insight about global stablecoin trends or the market. Mr. Ronghui, can you share your thoughts?
Sure, I can share my thoughts about the global trends for stablecoin. I want to start the topic back to 2 years ago, the year of 2023. So we know that in the end of 2022, there's a big FTX crash. After that, US becomes really conservative in the crypto-related policy and so on. So starting from that point, actually, many countries in Asia started to explore Web3 compliance framework and so on. So at that time, I started to serve on the advisory panel for MAS, right, Monetary Authority of Singapore, and also serve on the Hong Kong Web3 task force as a committee member. And I can still remember that my first meeting in the Hong Kong Web3 task force. Well, there's a big screen showing that Hong Kong stablecoin policy discussion. I was pretty shocked. Hong Kong started to explore the stablecoin policy at that time. Of course, everything is confidential, but I can share the story now. And so we've been in the discussion with Hong Kong government for 2 years. Start with whether Hong Kong should issue stablecoin, right? And what does the sandbox should look like, right? We even issue what we call chocolate coin as a test for the sandbox of Hong Kong stablecoin and so on. And many years of discussion, and we don't know how it can become a real compliance framework, right? So it's all about discussion. And also at the same time, Texas, actually, which is also CertiK's partner, got the stablecoin license in Singapore. So that's all these things happened in the year of 2023. But you can see in 2023, in 2024, lots of effort has been done, but the progress is very minimal, I would say. Well, things got changed, right? This year, after Trump's administration, right, and after the pass for the Genesis bill, and after a very successful IPO, right, for Circle, I would say US turned to be very crypto friendly, and so we participated in lots of this discussion as well in DC and so on, and we're also invited to give comments for the Clarity bill, I think, which is also very important, right? And also, in US, they are still debating who should be the regulator for Web3, right, for cryptocurrency, right? SEC or CFTC and so on, right? And but I would things become much more positive. And this year, after in Asia, developments, lots of developments has been done, right? In Hong Kong, in Singapore, and then come to Korea, right? So I would say about the how to what are the real use case, right, for stablecoin beyond just the payments and so on, and each area want to do some pioneering work, right, to demonstrate the power of stablecoin and so on. So I think, CertiK, we want to help, right? We want to kind of like work closely with our partner, with regulators, right, to help them at least worry less about the cybersecurity, worry less about the security of the infrastructure, such that we can focus more on the use case, right, on the business development and so on. So that's why I think we are very active in this activity and collaborate with WEMIX and many great partners here in this panel, right, to explore how we can turn it into from a hot topic to real use case. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then Mr. James Ang. Yeah, everybody knows that Chainalysis is the global giant of the Web3 data analysis and the compliance domain. And can you share your insight or thoughts about the recent global trends about stablecoin?
Yeah, very happy to. We see a strong momentum that is driving the adoption of stablecoins. First, of course, driven by enterprises. And then I think, as we see this momentum maturing, it will also move to the consumer space. We do need to see applications of real world use cases for it to mainstream. But this trend is irreversible, right? You can think of the trend of finance moving into the digital space as a trend where you used to use physical letters to send a communication note, and now you're using email or WhatsApp. This trend is irreversible. And I think as members of the ecosystem, we need to ensure that we provide the right guardrails to ensure that there is mainstream adoption. And those guardrails are around compliance, risk management, security, transparency, and trust, right? I think these 5 areas are very, very important in order for adoption of stablecoins to go mainstream.
Thank you. And then Mr. Daniel, SENTBE is a leading fintech company, and I heard that you have some special right in practice about on-ramping and off-ramping and stablecoin remittance, right? And can you share your thoughts about stablecoin market in terms of the fintech?
Yes. So we started our business as a TradFi payments business. And from our customers' voice, we hear increasing number of requests regarding on-off ramping, which is proof that this space meaning the stablecoin payment space, has gained a lot of trust from the institutions as well as the retail players. So the on-off ramping is a proof that more and more liquidity is moving in and out between the TradFi sphere as well as the Web3 environment. If you look back past few years, the stablecoin payment, on-off ramping, all this sort of jargons has been a privilege for a handful number of people, whereas now we hear just normal people requesting us, can you actually off-ramp these trade payment volumes, these settlements? So this has been a clear phenomena in the TradFi environment as well, that the stablecoin payment as well as the bridging between stablecoin and the fiat currency has gained trust in general. Yeah.
Thank you. And Mr. Sean Ang, he's from Chainlink. Actually, Chainlink has maintained partnership with WEMIX and Wemade for several years. Can you share the insight about recent trends over the global stablecoin market?
Sure. So generally speaking, we're definitely seeing more and more stablecoins pop up, left and right? Be it definitely a little bit more on the DeFi side of things and the protocol side, but we're also seeing governments explore this, regulated entities explore this. You're also seeing fintechs, payment companies, everyone thinking of the idea of having their users using a stablecoin within their network. And in my personal opinion is that people are using apps or dApps, and the underlying service is a stablecoin or settlements based on stablecoins, and they won't even know it. But I think this is definitely a trend that I think will come through in the next couple of months or years. But definitely, as my fellow panelists have mentioned, the common topics that are typically brought up, trust, security, transparency is all something that is definitely needed in the space. And with more and more, financial institutions, governments coming in, I think that's something that they are trying to prioritize as well. And, from Chainlink's perspective, this is something that we're also prioritizing. We've always prided ourselves in security, transparency first, verifiable data on chain, making sure that any kind of like stablecoin, tokenized assets are all 1:1 backed, making sure that their investors or any kind of player on chain you looking to issue a tokenized asset or stablecoin explores or is trying to adapt to this, what we call like a standard in this point in time. Yeah.
Thank you. As a panelist, I would like to add one comment. I think the most important aspect of stablecoin trends is that the integration of traditional finance and on-chain finance, Web3 finance. So as a listed company, Wemade had a business and blockchain business for 8 years. And we have been suffered from big gray regulations, and we are suffering from the argues from the market. So I'm really glad to see this trend that anyway, the stablecoin is going to under regulation. That means that like Wemade, the listed company, can play our own business perfect legally. I believe that stablecoin is the cornerstone that the more traditional company can join the Web3 business and the industry. Let's go to the closer to home, our home, Korea. And as you know, nowadays the legislation of KRW stablecoin is advancing rapidly in Korea. So as you know, basically Korea has a very big crypto retail market. Mm-hmm. So to the Chainalysis, Chainlink, CertiK, Korea market is very important, right? Yeah. So James, can you share your thoughts about the KRW stablecoin, future of KRW stablecoin, or the standard, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Korea has a very unique opportunity to become a leader in KRW stablecoin and show the rest of the ecosystem how to launch, manage this, and scale this. Korea has, I think, 51 million in terms of population. And out of the 51 million Koreans or South Koreans, data shows that between 10 to 12 million are crypto asset holders, right? So Korea as a country, it's very familiar with digital finance and crypto. So that's point number one. Point number two, if you look at Korea as a major trading nation, the trade flows every year, it's about $700 billion. That in itself is a great place to apply stable coins for settlement, for real-time payments, for treasury holdings, right? And then the third thing is that Korea has a huge number of manufacturers, which also have an ecosystem of suppliers, supply chain, demand, international trade flows, in itself is an interesting use case for stablecoins. And I think, if the right regulatory framework is in place, which provides clarity to the Korean one stablecoins issuers in terms of what is the regulatory framework, and for the alliance like GAKS to be able to then take the leadership and provide a platform that can comply with the foundation and the regulatory requirements, I think Korea has a very, very good opportunity to become a leader, to show the rest of the world how to take a leadership forward.
I agree. So I used the word that K-finance.
Yes.
Yeah, K-finance is the the next agenda and national task following the K culture. Yeah. Then can you share your thoughts about KRW stablecoin?
Yeah, thank you. So I think KRW stablecoin will definitely have its use case, as James mentioned, starting from the import-export trade settlements. We do hear the immediate needs of SME clients who wants to settle with Tether or Circle. And expanding from that, I think there's a greater opportunity for the major exporters based out of Korea to use KRW stablecoin as a means of settlement with their import partners down the line. But in order to do that, I think the core building block would be to engage more partners within the KRW stablecoin ecosystem that are based out of Korea, because they are the ones receiving KRW stablecoin as the importer, and the meaning of holding KRW stablecoin, there should be some kind of meaning for them to hold into it, right? And then the whole ecosystem outside of Korea should be built in line with the ecosystem within Korea in order to make this usage meaningful. And I think at the same time, the usage of KRW stablecoin domestically will have some other interesting use cases. Some of the examples that has been discussed around is using this as a payment means of settlement for the contents, especially since some of the Korean content has been gaining traction. The government is, initiating to use this as a means of settlement for the content creators as well as the buyers. And I think, starting from the trade settlement, and then moving on to other means of payment, I think Korean one stablecoin has a lot of potential down the line to be used.
Right, thank you. And Sean, can you share your thoughts about KRW stablecoin?
Sure. So I think at least on my front, Chainlink itself, we work with quite a number of Korean-based projects. This could be from the gaming front. We work quite closely with US close partners as well. I think Korea is definitely an interesting market. As James mentioned, there's a heavy retail crowd involved here, and it's also very interesting as we've seen Korea relative to its Asian counterparts has been relatively stricter in terms of cryptocurrency and I would say regulatory movements or progressions, right? So I would say on the stablecoin front, with them exploring this, it's really something already interesting. I also think that's probably why it's taking a little bit more time as compared to some of these other jurisdictions in terms of a bit more regulatory clarity. But with that in mind, with a heavy retail crowd, I think Korea itself will probably have to really focus on like I mentioned, the trust, the compliance, especially with some of like if it's going to be a Korean one stablecoin, then there will definitely be some form of like capital controls, money sovereignty being involved there. And I think on our side, which is why we're also we're aware of these kinds of concerns. And on our side, we've recently come out with something called ACE, which is automated compliance engine on our side. It kind of like long story short allows you to take a look at what kind of like policies you want to implement into your stablecoin or protocol. And it's mainly for if you want to whitelist something, you want to have jurisdictional controls, something to really keep in mind. So I think from a country like Korea with its setup and with its type of users, it's really something to be able to an opportunity to really explore. Yeah.
Okay. And Ronghui, can you share your thoughts about KRW Stablecoin? Yeah.
Sure. So actually, during the Korean Blockchain Week, right, CertiK, we released a Skynet report on Korean market, right? We also published it during the week and also share it with you before. So in our report, basically, we did lots of study actually, and we state that the Korean market actually is pretty unique, in the sense that all the panelists mentioned that there is a huge retail user base, right, for cryptocurrency and so on. On the other hand, I would say lots of giant companies in Korea are also, I would say, try to embrace the cryptocurrency technology. That's very unique in the sense that the retail user, right, give the foundation for the wide adoption, while giant companies like Wemade can integrate, right, cryptocurrency like a Korean one stablecoin into the existing application, right? Give direct access, right, to retail user and so on. With the combination of these two, right, it definitely can be a very pioneering in advancing wide adoption, right? So that's why I feel like Korean market is really unique and very important for CertiK and I would say many other partners. And one of the concern is about regulators and so on. And that part I would say is a little bit more conservative compared with many other places. But many other places may not have the advantages of this retail user and base and the support from giant companies and so on. So we really hope that, right, CertiK, right, Chainalysis, Chainlink, and other players, right, SENTBE and so on, we can work together, right, to push this forward. So as James mentioned, right, so if we can make it more secure, right, more compliant, right, more transparent and so on, right, we would love, right, we can help lay down the foundation, right, for compliance. And right now many areas are very crazy about the development of stablecoin and so on. But what is the real use case, right? I would say Korean one stablecoin has also some advantages in the sense that kind of like the Korean has a very advanced gaming industry, right, movie industry, lots of KOLs, right, K-pop and so on, and with the support of these giant companies like Wemade and so on. So these can definitely be the real use case, right, for the Korean one stablecoin and so on, and build a very strong demonstration, right, to the rest of the world, right, about how it can work, right.
Thank you. As you mentioned, the regulators of Korea has a concern about the stablecoin, issuing stablecoin. So we altogether build the KRW stablecoin infrastructure, Stablenet, because our goal is that meet all of the demand from Korean regulators. So as you know, there are so many public chains like Ethereum or Solana, Tron, but the public chain is public chain. So the original nature of public chain is, I think, different from the demands of from the regulators. So our goal is that we build KRW stablecoin dedicated infrastructures that can meet all of the standard or demands from Korean regulators. Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then let's dive into more technical aspect to the infrastructures. Today we launched GAKS, our alliance for KRW stablecoin infrastructures. And can you share your thoughts about the infrastructures based on your experience? FinTech has some requirement to the infrastructures of stablecoin.
If I understood correctly, I think the most important part of the infrastructure should be interoperability with other systems and ecosystems, so it can scale down the line. And at the same time, it has to be compliant. So some of the infrastructures, they inherently have some of the non-compliant features embedded within the infrastructure, which makes the partnership really hard to scale. And other part is the modular infrastructure architecture, I think. So within the TradFi space, we do integrate with many other fintech players to expand our network of payment rails. And whenever we do that, the first hardship that we face is seeing very messy API document from the partners. It makes us really hard to prioritize whatever we do, and really hard for us to scale down the line. And it takes more of our technical resource to just do the integration per se. So having a very well-organized modular API architecture would make it more customer friendly as well as more scalable down the line. I think those are one of the most important factors from the infrastructure perspective that we have as a payment player.
Oh, thank you. And Ronghui, especially you are a professor in computer science, right? Yeah, in Columbia University.
Yes.
Can you share your thoughts or insight about the infrastructures of stablecoin?
Sure, of course. So actually, I'm teaching Web3 courses this semester, and on every Thursday, today is Thanksgiving, so I can come here to attend the panel. So at the beginning of the semester, students asked, "Can we have a lecture about stablecoin?" I said, "Sure, right? We have a lecture about stablecoin." And the first question I asked students is about, is a stablecoin price stable? Right? Many students say that, yes, it's definitely stable, right? It's regulated, right? And it's backed by US dollar, one to one, something like that. But I said in reality, right? In fact, it's not stable, right? When I give the lecture, I said, there are about 24 big DPEG events in the past few years for major stablecoins, even include the USDT, right, USDC, and so on. And today the number of DPEG maybe already around 30, I would say. And so why, right? Why it has this DPEG risk and so on, right? So I said that because there are lots of risk factors, right? So first there are on-chain risk, including, let's say, smart contract risk, like underlying blockchain, right, risk, right, consensus, right, and so on. And there are oracle risk, right? And I would say the first two risks, right, smart contract risk, blockchain risk, should be handled by CertiK, right? We provide our services and so on, right, to help reduce the risk. And oracle risk, right, Chainlink is working on that. And we also have off-chain risk. Off-chain risk, including, let's say, compliance risk, right? Chainalysis is working on that. And also they are what we call the operational risk, like a private key management, this kind of stuff. And CertiK is also focusing on this area. So first of all, people need to understand the risk. And I would say there's nothing to hide, right? These are the risks. And we also try to educate the regulators, right? Our clients, right? The community and so on. These are the risks. And we are working very hard on this, right? Provide solutions, right? Product services to mitigate, to first let people be aware of the risk. Second, try to mitigate the risk, and then try to prevent the risk and so on. So that's, I would say, what CertiK and many other partners in the industry, including Chainalysis, Chainlink, and also we made WEMIX, right? We're working together to reduce this risk.
Thank you. And James, please share your thoughts about infrastructures of stablecoins.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the history of business, the digitalization of business actually happened in the 80s, and actually then after that became mainstream during, the dot-com stage. And then eventually broadband came, mobile came, cloud came, and then now we have AI, right? And now we're looking at the digitalization of money, right? And when this happens, you need a very robust infrastructure to support the digitalization of what used to be fiat traditional banking to now moving and accelerating into digital finance, crypto, and stable coins. And therefore, the compliance, the security, the interoperability, the fact that this has to be auditable as well. It has to meet certain standards that are generally accepted by bodies of regulatory framework. That has to be in place. And therefore, I think when you look at launching a Korean won stablecoin infrastructure, it becomes even more important because today, this is distributed. This is distributed and it requires every company to come together to piece together an infrastructure. And I think what WEMIX has actually done today to pull together the industry leaders to put in place the fundamental and foundational pieces to make it easier for potential stablecoin issuers to use the infrastructure as a platform. It's very important because essentially you're providing them the right infrastructure, the right compute, the right security layer to help them launch something which is compliant with the regulatory requirements. I think it's a move in the right direction and it's a good way to take leadership.
Okay, thank you. And Sean, can you share your thoughts about the infrastructures of stablecoin?
Sure. So on my side, I think I don't think there's a perfect infrastructure in place right now. I don't think we'll be there anytime soon. Personally, I think this is a great effort to really work towards the standard that we want to be. We want to get everyone on from a stablecoin perspective, from a tokenized assets perspective. On-chain usage, on-chain adoption from financial institutions. It's something that I think all of us are working on, right? More specifically on our side, Oracle risk, as you mentioned earlier, something we think about every day, right? Like how will we be able to get potentially these institutions, these new, I would say, on-chain users comfortable with oracles and also with the tokens that they're potentially transacting on-chain using as collateral within DeFi. And all of these are definitely risks and security factors that I think everyone would have to think about. And it definitely takes more than just, a couple of players or a couple of, hands to really craft something like this standard out in mind, right? To be able to get that wide, large-scale adoption and move forward with the next step. So definitely think this alliance is something that, is really beneficial to the wider crowd, the wider community as well. And I think, definitely a good step and good initiative to take this industry forward, especially on the Korean won stablecoin side.
Thank you. Yeah, basically, the infrastructure for stablecoin requires a multiple layer, as you mentioned, the security, compliance, and interoperability, and so on. So that's why we launched GAKS today. And I strongly believe that just one company can hardly build the full cycle, life cycle infrastructures of stablecoin. So we need to collaborate and cooperate as a specialist in their own domain. And we believe that our collaboration will build really strong infrastructures of stablecoin. Not only KRW stablecoins, but also all of the stablecoins globally. Yeah, I wish.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for your insight. And we are coming to the last question. So, James, I just wondering about your expectation about our partnership, GAKS.
I have a big expectation of our partnership. I think first and foremost, I think it's a great honor and pleasure to be invited to be part of the alliance. Chainalysis, we have been the leader in providing blockchain analytics to the world for the last 11 years. We were very early in the game. Very early, our founders realized that in order for blockchain to mainstream you need to build trust. And therefore, our mission is to build trust in blockchain. And how do we build trust? We build trust by providing transparency. We build trust by providing the right compliance tools for the ecosystem players. We build trust by making sure that we have the right tools to ensure that we are not just reactively taking actions on illicit activities, but proactively monitoring what is happening in the ecosystem so that we can take preventive actions. We make sure that we have the right security in place to ensure that if there are any attacks on any blockchain infrastructure or smart contracts, we have a product called Hexagate, which is very interoperable with CertiK's product to ensure that we provide the right alerting and monitoring function for potential blockchain issuers to understand their security. And then the other aspect is scams, right? Scams is a huge problem. It's a 1 trillion problem globally and is growing. So how do we ensure that we provide the right monitoring detection tools for any Web3 blockchain ecosystem players to prevent victims from becoming victims of scams, right? So my expectations of our partnership is very high because I think Korea has the potential to show the world how the Korean won stablecoin can slowly become mainstream in part of everyone's life, as well as in the enterprise application. And I see that as Chainalysis' responsibility to put in place the right tools, the right processes, the right people to ensure that our alliance can provide the same level of, I would say, support to the rest of the ecosystem to ensure that from day one, we are compliant. From day one, we have the right, compliance, the right security, the right framework in place.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, I know that the SEC, US, and the FBI, and Korean police and prosecutors are your clients, Chainalysis clients. So I believe that Chainalysis is the best partners to build stablecoin infrastructures. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ronghui, can you talk about your expectation about GAKS Decentralized?
Okay, sure. So I would say again, I have huge expectation for GAKS,
Yeah,
and
everyone.
everyone. So we're really looking forward to it, and we are really honored, right, to be invited by Wemade and also WEMIX and work with so many great players, right, in the space. And I would say in the short term, I have basically two expected efforts that I really want to push forward. One is about, I would say, we should work together on a real use case, right? Let's say maybe we can start with some of the we made one application, right, or one real use case, and maybe in gaming, right, something like that, and we kind of like push everything end to end and turn it into a showcase, right, for the regulators, right, for other partners, and for the industry, and so on. So this is first thing I really want to kind of like work hard on it with other partners and so on. The second thing I would say is also, well, how we can address the concern from regulators, especially Korea, right? So actually we talk to many regulators in different areas, like US, of course, right, UAE, Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea, Japan, Malaysia, and so on. So when we talk to them, right, so regulators sometimes they express concern as well, like Ronghui. So you know that although from outside, right, we have it's a very strong agency, but inside, right, they are showing of manpower actually, right? They only have maybe several man team, right, working on the regulation for crypto and so on, and they do not have enough, I would say, tools for them to regulate the space. And they said that, well, they worry that when there is a bad things happen, right, bad instance, especially in their region, and then they know it from the newspaper, right? They really scared of that. So that's why CertiK, we just released a new product called Skynet Enterprise. We have a Skynet retail, basically give security ratings, right? Security score for crypto projects, try to show potential risks and so on. And we are building a Skynet Enterprise, and we try to release it to the regulators. Some regulators already are trying our product. Actually, it's the demand are from regulators. They say that they want to see the alerts, they want to see the instances, they want to see all these transactions, right, abnormal transactions and so on, rather than they read things from newspaper and so on. So that's why we're building this. And I think with this kind of with Skynet Enterprise, right, we can, as I mentioned, let the regulator first be aware of the risk rather than hide the risk from them, right? Let them be aware of the risk and show to them that we have solution, although it's maybe not perfect, but well, we are well prepared, right, to help reduce and mitigate the risk and so on. Hopefully, if we work together, right, we can make this procedure more smooth. Yeah.
And then please share your thoughts or expectations to this alliance. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we also have high expectations from this alliance. I think Ronghui just what he said, I 100% agree. I think the first thing we need to do together is to put efforts to make a use case. I think Wemade and WEMIX, you guys have a great platform to actually apply the initial version of the KRW stablecoin within your ecosystem. And what can SENTBE do within this partnership is pretty obvious. I think we should be the bridge of the on-off-ramping so that the overall liquidity of the KRW stablecoin that is circulated within the ecosystem gets increased. I think we should be spearheading the liquidity flows within the platform so there can be more use cases down the line based on the liquidity we have, liquidity flow that's going on under the platform. And from SENTBE's perspective, our vision is to create borderless finance for more. We've been running business from 2015, and at the initial phase of our business, what we did was to use BTC as a means of remittance. So back then, we bought BTC from Korean exchange, send it to Philippines exchange, sell it out, and disperse with PHP there. And ironically, we stopped that model, not because of the regulators' enforcement, but because there was a kimchi premium back then. We had to buy it expensive, sell it cheaper. So we almost ran out of a business, so we stopped that model. And at the same time, the regulators back then, the Ministry of Finance and Strategy, they came up with the new bill allowing non-bank fintechs to handle remittance services. So it was a good timing. And based on our experience, we do believe that Korean regulators, they are kind of conservative, but they do have power and willingness to make a great regulatory framework so that this new stablecoin pegged with Korean won can be used in the real life. And we obviously don't want this KRW stablecoin to be another kind of crypto asset. We want to see the actual use case of this asset in our real life.
Okay. Thank you for your invaluable insight about stablecoins and infrastructures. And what's clear from today's discussion is that building strong stablecoin infrastructures requires what we have, right? So this is why we launched Alliance GAKS. As a pioneer of Korean blockchain industry, we made not only pursue the profit through the stablecoins, We have a kind of mission as a first generation blockchain company in Korea. So we really want to build a strong and useful infrastructures for KRW stablecoins with our partners. And I hope many Korean companies and business teams can use our infrastructures. Yeah. And thank you for today. This is Singapore. So yeah, in Korea, it's we started winter. So
Yes.
yeah, weather is a bit cold, but in Singapore, the weather is perfect and so warm and hot. Yeah. So thanks for joining today, and let's make alliance and let's make stablecoin infrastructure together. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.